And now we welcome to the DFO Rundown. He was the 14th overall pick in 2004. He went on to play over 15 pro seasons in the AHL as well as the National Hockey League, mainly in the NHL. He was registered for 542 games as a starting goaltender or coming in relief, but then also sat on the bench for probably another 500. Goalies really get screwed out when you think about games played overall. Now he's an analyst. He's a father. Devin Dubnyk joins us. Devin, welcome to the show. How you doing?
Awesome. Thanks for having me, guys.
I was thinking about that. I was looking. I was like, geez, he was in the league a long time. Only 542 games. Like you spend a lot of them as a goalie because nobody, goalies don't play every game. And so even when you were starting 60 games a year, you're still missing 20. Like, do you feel you're getting shortchanged on the games played list for in the NHL?
Well, I mean, all goalies are equal, so it's not you're not getting shortchanged that way. But I don't know. Maybe they should change it to like a half game or something when you're on the bench. But it's
100%.
interesting because I mean, I didn't even realize that it was our team services guy that was helping me set up. I was going through stuff with my wife when that 500 games hit, and so he was kind of helping me set up. And obviously, it was not my main focus at the time. And he was like, dude, there's only 75 goalies all time that have played 500 games. And I was like, no, that can't be right. So it's pretty crazy, but it goes to show that, lots of goalies have been around for a lot more games. You just only get one if you touch the ice for a minute.
Tyler had just asked us, and I was a skater. Frank was a skater. If we had a favorite goalie growing up, and neither one of us really did. Did you play
Haters.
goal? Did you play goal from a young age? And if so, did you have a favorite skater, or was it just goalies?
I did play goal from a pretty young age. I started when I was like 10. And then obviously I played player before that. We had a backyard rink, so I loved going out and skating that way. I was pretty dialed on goalies. I had a few different guys, but for favorite skater, Pavel Bure
Oh yeah.
in Vancouver was like, and I mean, I'll go watch like YouTube clips of him because I mean, he was like a cheat code back then. It was like a guy, it was like Connor McDavid just getting plopped on the ice in the 90s. I mean, he was like flying compared to everybody else. So I lived in Vancouver at that time too, when they went on their cup run in '94. So he's definitely my favorite player. And then goalie wise, uh, Freddie Brathwaite was the goalie for the Calgary Flames when I first started to be a goalie, and that's when we moved to Calgary. And so, obviously, I tell people this not a household name, especially in the states here. Not a lot of people know who that is, but I loved him, and he was super exciting to watch. We're pretty much opposites. He's like 5'9", I'm 6'6". But he was a blast. I got to meet him a couple times when I was a kid. He was amazing to me, and then I also got to meet him when I was older too, which was pretty cool. I told him I had a signed jersey and stick in my room when I was a kid, and he didn't believe me, so I had to pull up some pictures for him. And then Curtis Joseph, I loved watching him in Edmonton. My brother was a massive Toronto Maple Leafs fan, so I watched him there. And then for when I got older, for watching a guy to kind of take things from was Luongo.
And Luongo enters the Hockey Hall of Fame tonight, Devin. We've been talking earlier in the show about how Curtis Joseph certainly deserves his place in the Hall of Fame. Eventually, surprised that he hasn't been in to this point. But wanted to ask you about your career. You formally announced your retirement, I guess, a couple weeks back now. You did not play last season, wrapped up your career in 2021 with the Sharks and the Avs. Why the announcement, and tell us what you're up to now.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like I never really thought of it. I mean, I thought it was pretty obvious that I was done playing. But my my friends and family were kind of poking the question. When people start to come out and announce their retirements, they're like, "Oh, are you gonna ever do anything like that?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I never really thought about it." So I just reached out to my agent in the NHLPA, and we were kind of putting something together. And then I go to New Jersey for the NHL Network stuff, and I did an interview right before that, that was just about the NHL Network stuff, and he put something in there about me being retired. So I get to New Jersey, I think it was like a Friday night, and we were kind of, I don't know, I was working with the PA, and they're like, yeah, we'll put it out next week sometime. Like, it wasn't a rush. And then I start getting text messages that are like, hey, congratulations. And I was like, on what? Like, I didn't know what was going on. And so I had to go, I went and Googled, and it was like, and so he'd kind of like announced my retirement in the article. And I was like, oh shoot, so I called the NHLPA, and I was like, hey, let's just like push this thing out here. I'd like to at least kind of do it on my own terms. So we pushed it out, and then, you know, it was nice. It's nice to I got a lot of nice messages and phone calls, and it's nice to catch up with people. And just kind of reflect. I'd never really planned on doing it officially, but that was kind of what I always joked, is like, well, I haven't been doing anything for a year, and anybody that's hung around me knows I'm not really looking to make a comeback here, so it wasn't a surprise to anybody.
Well, congratulations, a fantastic career, and unfortunately that means you get inundated with requests like this one to join a podcast, but wanted to ask about your transition to media, and did you always think you would maybe do something in media, and how have you enjoyed it so far?
I've had a blast. It's been awesome. To be honest, it was never something that I thought hard about doing. I always like thought about it maybe a little bit, but it certainly wasn't something I planned on. And honestly, I was sitting in my basement watching playoffs last year, and I was getting bored because I was waiting for the golf course to open. It was still cold here. And, I just thought to myself, I'm like, I should give that a try. So as I was sitting there, I called my agent, said, do you know anybody over at the NHL Network? And he said, yeah, sure. Called over there. Next day, did a quick Zoom interview. And they said, you want to come out here in 10 days? And I said, sure. So just it happened that fast. And you know, I know just from over the years, meeting people at NHL Network, it was easy because knew a lot of the people there. I'd been there a couple times before, and so that was smooth. And went out there and just got into it. I mean, they really kind of throw you in the fire for. It was the second round of playoffs, and I remember sitting at the desk, and I don't get nervous about it, but I like right before we went on, I was like, so how's this work? They're like, well, like, well, Jameson will kind of point at you and let you know when to talk. I'm like, okay, cool. How long do I talk for? And they're like, just, depends. And I was like, perfect. And
That's
was
TV
it.
in a nutshell for you.
Yeah.
Good direction. Now,
yeah.
Devin, the goaltending position is such a unique one, because having talked to so many goals, and I saw you basically in your whole development, your first, 7 years, 8 years in the American League and then in the NHL. And for a lot of goalies, for the vast majority, it's like you get to 24 or 5 before they really are comfortable at the NHL level. You have a few Marc-Andre Fleury's and Carey Prices, but those guys seem to be rare. And it seems to be more the mental aspect of it, just to overcome a bad game or a bad goal and to let it go. And, you experience kind of like a career challenge in 13-14 when you were at Edmonton and Nashville and then Arizona, and then you get to Minnesota and boom, your career explodes. But people forget you'd actually had some really good numbers the previous 2 years in Edmonton. I want you to take me back to kind of, that up and then that down area. And what was the biggest challenge for you in that 13-14 and even, 14-15 season, and maybe the off season more so?
Yeah, no, it's funny because like you said, even coming to Mini, and you talking to people about my career, they're like, I just came out of nowhere. I'm like, well, I did play like 5 seasons before that, and I was the starting goalie in Edmonton for a couple years before that, so I didn't just come out of nowhere. But so it was tough. So we had the everything was kind of going in the trajectory that you thought it would. As each year I was playing a little more, playing a little better. And then the shortened season, played a ton with Ralph Kruger there. It really felt like that year, like we were finally starting to take a step in the right direction. Ralph had kind of had everybody bought in. Thought I had a really good season. like stats wise, not like that's all that matters, but I think I had like a 920. So I'm going into that off season excited about a full year, and then Ralph got fired, Mac T came in, Dallas came in, and for the whole summer it was like I felt like they were just trying to trade for anybody that could put on a set of goal pads that wasn't me. And so that was a little frustrating going into the year. And then, I didn't play well. So the thing is, if all this stuff happens, if I would have gone out there and played well, then that year wouldn't happen. I mean, I played terrible, and then you got a new GM, new coach. Obviously, that's their set of eyes on what I'm doing. So I even looking at that season, the start was so bad that I actually turned around, and there was the end stretch was actually not bad. And I remember approaching Dallas at one point when Briz was there, because Briz was kind of continuing to start games, and I approached Dallas and just said, "Hey, like I know everything looks bad, but if you look at the last 12 games, it's been a lot better. Can you stop shoving me on the bench?" And then like shortly after that, I got traded. And then Nashville was a mess. Played 2 games, played terrible, down to Montreal, down to Hamilton. And I think the biggest thing that off season is, I just wanted that season to end so bad. It felt like it lasted forever. And of course I got asked to be a black ace in Montreal. After the season was finally over with Hamilton, they wanted me to go to Montreal, and I was there until they beat Boston in the second round, and I finally just said to management, I can't be here anymore. Like, I can't be skating with 5 19-year-old kids. I got a kid at home I haven't seen for weeks, months, and so I left. And the biggest thing in that off season was just like believing in myself, like almost just throwing that entire season away and remembering that everything was on the proper trajectory. Everything was fine. So that didn't define me. I didn't forget how to play goal in one season, and to just not go into the off season and think I got to make all these crazy changes, just keep doing what I was doing and almost try to throw that away. And fortunately for me, Arizona believed in me, and they were the only ones, and gave me a chance, and got to go work with Berkey, who just injects confidence into you, and played. And then obviously everybody knows the story from there coming to me.
And so that, you mentioned Sean Burke as the goalie coach, and there's lots of talks about goalie coaches on every different team. And I liked how you're honest. Hey, if I would have played well, then none of the stuff really would have mattered. But how much you had lots of different goalie coaches. Burke, was it just that he injected positivity and confidence in you? Was there any like technical things? Like, can a goalie coach make that much of an impact when you're 7, 8 years into your career ultimately? Or is it more the mental impact he can make and just by maintaining confidence? Or was there a technical thing that he did that really helped you?
It was both. It was both for him. And for me, I mean, Berkey's had great success with just about everybody he's worked with. So it's not a secret there. The biggest thing at that time coming in, where the previous season had been so bad, and I was just trying to get back to trusting myself. Like, the thing that was great with Berkey is I knew, I wouldn't have been there if he didn't believe in me. I knew he'd seen me play a ton, so he was familiar with me. It wasn't like trying to impress somebody new. And with Berkey is like, if you listen and you work your ass off, then that's all you need to do. And he'll tell you if you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, or you're not working, and he's going to have your back. And so he was really with the coaching staff there with Tippett, like Berkey he had all the pull with the goalies. So you never had to worry about, and Tip was great. He wasn't hard on the goalies or anything, but you just knew that if you had Berkey in your corner, you didn't have to worry about anything else, because he had your back for everything else. And that's kind of exactly what I needed mentally at that time, was just listen to him, go work. He's going to have your back. You don't have to worry about anything else. And then technically, for me, like, I know he's he's big. Obviously, Smitty played super deep in the crease, and I wasn't sure if he was going to tell me to play way back in my crease. But all he wanted to do was for me to push, stop, have my feet set. And he's like, I don't care where you are in your crease. It's going to depend on the play, what happens in front of you. Obviously, if it's closer, you might need to be a little deeper to be able to get there. But wherever you need to be, I want you to be able to get there on your feet and be stopped and set. And so that was kind of what we really worked on, was where was that for me in the crease to be able to push on my feet and be set and not be sliding around. And it brought me back a little bit, but I wasn't as deep as Smitty was. And we hammered on that every single day. And it was awesome. I mean, once I got the feel for it, that was the biggest thing for me for the rest of my career, was trying to play as much as I possibly could on my feet and set.
As you went through that summer in 2014, Devin, what was that like? You mentioned trying to flush all of it, but to then go through the summer and only have, you said, one team interested in you, like how'd you deal with that?
So I'm a pretty big optimist, so I'm always kind of like, you know what, it's fine. You played long enough, everything's going to be fine. You've played against enough teams, someone's going to want to give you a try. And so I never really worried about it until like right toward the end of free agency. And I was like, wow, really nobody's going to give you a try here. It was like, you know, there were like 6 or 7 teams that were like ready to give me a two-way, but I just couldn't believe it. I was like, seriously, nobody? And then, you know, Arizona started to get interested, and I had a good conversation with Berkey before, and then I think Philadelphia actually came in like last minute, but I'd already agreed with Arizona. But you know, it was definitely stressful, like right at the end. Like I said, I tried to just be like, think to myself, everything's going to be okay. And then the last few days started to get a little stressful. I was like I said, come on, is nobody really going to give me a shot here? And, you know, fortunately for me, everything fell into place the right way.
Yeah, and as much as Sean Burke helped you, you were only in Arizona for a couple months. Minnesota steps up and trades for you. Just talk about the opportunity you got in Minnesota, and then, you know, shortly thereafter, you know, Chuck Fletcher, you sign a $26 million deal that probably changed your life.
Yeah, no, it definitely did. We still live here now, so this is our home now. So it definitely changed our life. We had 2 of our kids here. Yeah, I mean, the thing like with Berkey is he got me, like, technically we worked on those things, but like I said, it wasn't like I was this like goalie who forgot how to play goalie. Like, I was playing before, so I was an NHL goalie for almost 5 years before. So it was just getting back to that, and then you know, I was talk about Minnesota as kind of being like the perfect storm, just mentally where I was coming in, because, you know, I when I went to Arizona, I kind of just took this mindset of, hey, you just saw how quickly it can be taken away from you. Like, you think it's there and then it's gone. And so, you know, with my age, you might not be a starter in the NHL again. Be okay with that. Just go work, be grateful for having a job in the NHL. And if you got to be a backup the rest of your career, you got to be a backup and just go enjoy it. That's kind of the mindset I took into Arizona. And but then, of course, you know, I started to play well, and then I started getting the itch again. It was, you know, I'd play 2 in a row, and then because Smitty was on a long-term deal, Smitty likes to play a lot, and fortunately for me at the time, Smitty was not playing very well, and it would be, you know, 2 games in a row, and then 3 games in a row, and then at the end it was 4 games in a row, and I mean, I was still trying to keep that same attitude of being grateful every time I stepped on the ice, but I was starting to get the itch again. Like, I you know, I don't want to play 20 games a year. I want to play 60. And so when I got traded to Minnesota, I mean, 2 things. One, I knew it was a really good hockey team that just was not performing. But it wasn't like getting traded to you know, a crappy team that you had no chance of success. This is a great hockey team that was just kind of in a downspin. And then also it was like bonus time for me. Like, I now got traded to a team where they're going to let me play. I never was going to have that opportunity in Arizona with Smitty there, just because he was signed long term, and you know, the ceiling was low for me. So now it was like, oh, I got this. Now I get to go play, and it allowed me to not worry about, not think about, the fact that I think when I got traded there's a 2.5% chance of making the playoffs or something like that. I mean, you start thinking about that stuff, and the mountain becomes bigger. Like for me, I was so excited to have the reins and go play again that I didn't think about anything other than just enjoying and being on the ice and playing. And then, the snowball started rolling.
And Devin, for that, you came in halfway through that year to Minnesota, but then the next 4 seasons, starting in 15, 16 through to 18, 19, you started the most games in the NHL at 200. Well, you played 259. I think you started like 254 or something like that. Like, you're over 60 games every year. Obviously, you wanted that. So, how challenging is it? Or is it maybe overrated sometimes? It's not as hard as some people think. The goalies should like athletes today are in an unreal shape. There's all the conditioning, the nutrition, everything else. Is 60 games that hard for a goalie, having done it 4 years in a row?
Well, I mean, I was getting in the 68, 69 a couple times, and I loved it. I mean, that was the biggest thing is I always, even the games that you had off, you'd be like, okay, you're not playing tonight, and you're like, oh, okay, that's going to be, I'll take a rest, and then you get to the game, and you're like, God, I wish I was playing tonight. Like, you're like, you're on the bench, you're like, if I'm here, I might as well be playing. Like, so I mean, we're all competitors, and any goalie, there's not a goalie out there that's going to tell you that he wouldn't want to play 82 games. Like you want to play. I just think both mentally and physically, which is shown, is having two guys that can play, and so that when you get to playoffs, that's a lot of games, and you can burn out. And I think like the stats, I don't know what it is, but I don't think anybody's won the cup that's played over like 55 games or something. I don't know what the stat is, but that's kind of where that transition came. And I think a lot of it honestly is mentally, because it's a lot of hockey, and you get to the end of the season, and if you've just been and especially because the second half of the season, all the games are condensed, so you're playing 3-4 games a week, and you go and then if you're like grinding to make the playoffs, you go on the stretch, and it's like you get to the playoffs, and it's a grind. Like you can burn out, and you see guys burn out. So I think it's a good thing. I think there's enough good goalies out there to have this kind of 1A, 1B scenario. I still think it's good to have a starting goaltender and not just like a 50-50. I don't like the 50-50 personally. But it is really good to have the backup playing, 30 games or a little bit more, but I still think you should have a 1A at least.
Now, I want to get your thoughts as we put on your analyst hat here for a second, because you can take us kind of maybe into the mind of the goalies. Frank, we were talking about Thatcher Demko. Maybe he's banged up, and guys, when you're banged up and you're good enough to play, but you're banged up, it's going to limit what you can do. Jack Campbell's off to a tough start in Edmonton. You probably went through that at a certain time. It might be 2 weeks, or your game's not where it's at. How hard is it in season when things don't go well early to reset? And are there a few things that that a goalie just has to do before it completely drives himself into the ditch?
Yeah, it's difficult, especially for like Campbell. I mean, I feel bad for him because he's a great goalie, and a lot of expectation coming in, and you can just see like he's being extremely hard on himself. It obviously hasn't started the way he'd want to, but the more it goes on, the kind of more it piles on, and you can see the fans. The fans are talking about, oh, he got 5 for 5, and like he got 5 for 5 because he earned it, and he's a good goalie, but it's starting to pile on, and so there's no real way. He's got to trust the team's got to trust him, the organization's got to trust him, which I'm sure they do, and they've shown. I mean, they're going to continue playing him. They gave him the contract, but he's got to kind of trust himself too and get out of that. Because the longer it goes on, then it's like every goal that goes in is like monumental. Whereas like when you're playing well and you're rolling, every goal that goes in is, just whatever, pull it out of the net, keep going. And he's got to get to a point where, it starts with one game and then build from there. But even if he plays 2 good games and the third game isn't great, you can't go back to that. Oh, here we go again. And it's difficult though, because especially stats wise, when you have a super poor start to a season, it's really hard to get your stats back to something that you want to look at, that are like acceptable to look at. So, I mean, that was kind of going back to what I said with that year in Edmonton when I got traded, was the start of my season was so bad that it didn't really matter. I played a pretty good stretch of like 12, 15 games and my stats still look terrible because it's hard to come back from it. So you got to be able to set that aside. But it's difficult with the pressure that's in Edmonton, and there's a ton of expectations there. But I think he'll be fine. He's got a great mentality. He's really well liked. I think he's probably can lay off himself a little bit and not beat himself up so much. But obviously he expects a lot. But that's one I'm not worried about at all.
Devin, we'll get to a rapid fire where the only rule is you have to answer the question. All right.
Okay.
Okay. Here we go. The one shooter who gave you the most trouble in your career?
Ovechkin. He's got like 5 hat tricks on me, I think. Maybe not 5, but a lot.
Now, was it just the sheer, velocity of his shot? What was it that made it so, like, obviously he scored on everybody. He's one of the greatest goal scorers ever.
Yes.
What made it so tough?
So it was very hard to read. He's kind of got that slingshot. His curve is crazy. So depending on where it came off his stick, it was really hard to read. Then, add the velocity to that, and then add the fact that I started to completely psych myself out every time I played him. Fortunately for me, I only play him twice a year. But it just, you want to talk about snowballing. It was like, oh, great, we're playing Washington. I look at Bruce. I'd be like, Bruce, you sure you want me to play tonight? we know what the outcome's going to be here. And so kind of I was psyching myself out. And then fortunately for me, I was able to, I think the last 2 times, but I know the last time we won 2-1 in Washington. So I finally was able to break the curse of Ovi getting 2+ on me. But I talked him into signing me a stick, so it was all worth it.
Nice. Who is your favorite goalie tandem partner that you played with, and why?
That's tough. I get some good ones. If I had to pick a favorite, probably Stalock, just purely entertainment, just what he brought every day. He was hilarious. I was obviously playing a ton of games, and that's why he was so great to have around. It didn't matter if he was playing or not. He was always bringing something to the rink, and great sense of humor. So yeah, I would say Al.
Well, Frank and I joked about this earlier. So who was the worst teammate you had for high heaters in practice?
Oh, Nail Yakupov. This guy was an idiot. Complete idiot. I tried to explain to him. So we were doing like a low drive from the corner, and he's zipping these things past my ear because he's trying to hit the elbow. And I try to explain to him, I'm like, you realize there's 3 outcomes here, okay? You hit the post. Sorry, you miss the net, you score, or you hit me in the ear. And I'm like, I hate all 3 of those. So if you want to practice this shot, go do it at the other end.
Did he ever get it?
Did he? Well, obviously not. He's nowhere to be found, so I don't think he hit that elbow too often.
How close were you to fighting Binnington?
Honestly, I look back on that, and I wish I would have known what he did to Carly, because I didn't even see what happened. I was just going up to him to tell him to settle down. I was more just skating around my end. And so I wasn't really I wasn't thinking that he was going to come at me. But I think if I would have seen what I didn't realize he gave the big fake punch to Carly. who obviously is an important player for us. But then when he tried to slash the back of my leg, and then all of a sudden I was like, oh, okay, we're going. And I mean, I'd be happy to. Like, I was joking after. I'm like, I could sit on his chest. Like, he's like 150 pounds. So, I mean, I am no killer by any means. But no offense to Binner, but I'd be happy to accept that. But he tends to. One thing I don't love is he tends to pick his spots, and he likes to stir things up, but he never actually gets involved. It's always a bump here and there. He never actually. I'd love to see him just drop the gloves one time, just to back up all his shenanigans.
Now, did you have a goalie fight in your career? I didn't look it up. I can't remember.
Not in the NHL. I had one in junior in the WHL in Regina. You can look it up on YouTube. Not a big deal.
Not a big deal. Okay, so
it's
go ahead.
Yeah, it's not much. I took a lot of swings from left field that had no chance of landing. And I definitely had the upper hand and the tail of tape. I think I was David Reiki was the guy, and he's like 6 foot, so definitely had a height advantage. But it was my 19-year-old year, and I hadn't been in one, so there was a line brawl, and I was like, I gotta get it over with here.
So if you had a choice in your NHL career, you could only have one: a goalie fight, which seems to really amp up the crowd, or a goalie goal. What would you have preferred?
Well, goal for sure, but there's a way better chance of me getting a fight than scoring a goal. Yeah, I would definitely go for the goal. But yeah, I mean, a fight would be cool too. I would have been up for one. There was a few guys I always told myself, like, I'm not fighting that guy. Like Robin Leonard, no, not happening. Like, you can chase me around the rink, I'll embarrass myself. I don't care. Ray Emery, another one. Nope. Would not have. If you want to come down and try to fight me, like, you can chase me around, but I'm not going with these guys.
But after that, you would have been open season. That's totally
yeah.
I
would. There's not a lot of guys. I mean, usually, like, just being my size, really, you can't. It's tough to get hurt in a goalie fight. Like, just grab on and throw. Like, no one's should be able to hit you hard enough. I mean, Smitty and Talbot. Smitty got him pretty good. That was a good fight. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, really, like there's like I said, Leonard is one. I mean, Emery used to fight tough guy players in the American League. Like, the guy was a psycho. So, like, and Leonard's the same way. I mean, the guy does like MMA in the off season. I'm like, no thanks. I'll fight a goalie that's a goalie, but I'm not fighting a goalie that's a UFC fighter in his spare time. Like, no.
One last one for you, Devin. I really appreciate this. There's lots of technical talk. You got guys like Kevin Woodley, and they've really, I think, educated us on the goalie position. But is there one move now that you're going to be in the analyst when you watch that you're just like, you know what? There's a criticism of goalies that just isn't accurate. What's the most common incorrect criticism of NHL goalies?
Oh, that's a good one. I thought you were going to go the other way with that. I think that the thing that I hate is like, goalies aren't allowed to get scored on with a straight shot anymore. And it's like, oh, well, he wasn't screened, and it was from the top of the circle. And even though it went straight by his ear hole and like off the crossbar, like, he saw that, so he probably should have stopped it. And it kind of drives me nuts. I'm like, put a helmet on and go see what that looks like. Like, the puck comes in a hurry off these guys' sticks, and it's getting more and more. Now, I mean, we always talk about with the one-piece sticks, there's no bad shots on the team. Everybody can shoot the puck. So if guys get open, they can beat a goalie, and it doesn't make it a bad goal. And I think that's one thing that drives me nuts, is it's like, if you let in a clear shot, then you'll get somebody who's never played goal before saying that he should have had that one. Or even if it maybe looks like he should have had it, but not. If it's a straight shot, it's just not okay. And then on the other side of it, I was just going to say, one thing I'd love to see go away. I just feel like goalies there's just way too much playing on your knees now, and I feel like guys are so good and so athletic that I like really think it would be beneficial for guys to be on their feet more. because you can see the way they move and when goals go in. I mean, I was watching highlights last night, and it's just they're so good and they're so quick and they're there. But reacting to a shot on your knees is completely different than reacting to a shot on your feet. And I think these guys are so good and athletic that I'd love to see it for younger goalies and goalies now to get away from being on your knees for shots if it's not necessary.
Awesome, man. You're going to be a great analyst, buddy. We really appreciate it. Continued success. Thanks for joining us, and stay safe on the icy roads of Minnesota as winter has come.
Awesome. Appreciate it, guys.